I'm Technovoid, and I like Hollow Knight. If you're watching this, you probably also like Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight's got a lot of bosses, and I've given my in-depth opinions on all of them in my boss ranking video. But what about you? What are your opinions on the bosses in Hollow Knight? And by your, I do mean like all of you put together in one large majority opinion-having creature, because I don't feel like doing a video on every single person's detailed opinions. So, introducing the Hollow Knight Boss Community Ranking. Over the past 2 weeks, I've presented a set of bosses as a community poll each day, with the most popular in each bracket advancing to the next round. Today, we're going to talk about all the results, and assuming that the majority opinion of people who voted in these polls is somewhat representative of the Hollow Knight community's thoughts on the matter, find the most loved boss in the entire game. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the ranking, I'd like to explain how the brackets were seeded, because there seemed to be a bit of confusion on that front during the polls. The seedings were decided based on the following rules. 1. Any bosses that have upgraded fights, such as False Knight and Failed Champion for example, will appear on the same side of the bracket, guaranteeing that they will at the latest duke it out in semifinals. I felt it would be pretty lame if the finals ended up being an easier and harder variant of the same boss, so I've made sure that they go head to head before then. 2. Each bracket consists of a combination of high and low seeds. I can understand why this might seem like a bad idea. If you pit really weak challengers against really strong ones, every matchup in the bracket stage will end up being a blowout. However, this is actually very common practice in bracket events. Why? Because ideally, you want your most hype matchup to happen in finals. By pitting high-ranked participants against each other early, you end up eliminating a lot of viable contenders for the crown early on, while the other side of the bracket, filled with low seeds, ends up being much easier for an average player to progress in and make it further into the tournament than they probably should. So yes, pitting high seeds and low seeds against each other early does make early rounds of tournaments one-sided, but that's all intentional to make sure that the most meaningful matches occur as far into the tournament as possible, and that the players that really deserve to have a chance at the crown get that opportunity. With these rules in mind, I gave every boss a seeding from 1 to 4, based on my own personal ranking, and semi-randomly placed them into brackets in a way that fulfilled both of these requirements. The following was the result. Now, it's time for the Hollow Knight Community Boss Ranking. Starting out with the first of many brackets, we have the Massive Moss Charger, Hornet Protector, Zero, and the Mantis Lord squaring up. Coming in dead last is Zero, with only 2% of the vote. Somehow, in what I can only assume is a dedication to the bit, Massive Moss Charger gets an entire 7% of the vote. Just barely beating it out for second is Hornet Protector with 8%. And of course, to nobody's surprise, the clear fan favorite of this round is the Mantis Lords, sweeping the competition with 84% of the vote. Moving on to the next group, we have the Pale Lurker, Gorb, Hornet Sentinel, and Failed Champion. Given that the Pale Lurker isn't even really a boss and was only on this ranking for the sake of a symmetrical bracket, it's no surprise they round out the bottom of this round with 3% of the vote. However, in what I thought was actually a pretty big upset, the Failed Champion comes in third with 13% of the vote. This actually really surprised me, given that I personally think the Failed Champion is one of the most mechanically solid fights in the game. Ascending into second place with 15% of the vote is Gorb, who isn't a bad boss by any means, but definitely has the meme turf advantage in this round. And in first place is Silksong's leading lady, Hornet Sentinel, with 68% of the vote. That rematch certainly is leaps and bounds more enjoyable a fight. Popping into bracket 3, we've got the Vengefly King, God Tamer, Hive Knight, and Sisters of Battle. Pulling up in last with a measly 1% of the vote is the Vengefly King. And sorry to the 1% of you who voted for him, but he damn well should have. Not faring much better is God Tamer, only cinching 3% of the vote. Guess folks really don't care for this fight, or more likely, don't like having to go through the trial of the fool. Coming in second is Hive Knight with 10% of the vote. This poor guy got some comments devoted to him, asking me how I could be so cruel to put him in such a difficult bracket. Alas, that's brackets for you, because in first place this round is the Sisters of Battle, making a clean getaway with 85% of the vote. Nobody could have seen this coming. Our next bracket pits Umu, No Eyes, Dung Defender, and Grey Print Zode against one another. No Eyes pulls up at the end with just 3% of the vote. I guess people really don't enjoy dodging those spirits. Just barely breaking into third is Umu with 4% of the vote, which is, Honestly, more than I thought it was gonna get, so good job Umu. Popping into second place with 16% is Greyprint Zote. As someone who really loves this fight, I should be taken aback, but I sorta get it. While I think this fight is really enjoyable and flexes a very different skill set from most battles, I have heard a lot of folks complain about it being too difficult and frustrating. Jumping into first place then is the Dung Defender himself, with 77% of the vote. Despite not being mechanically challenging, Dung Defender is fun to fight, accessible, and a great character, so I can totally see him deserving a spot in quarterfinals. Up next is the bout between Flukemarm, Brooding Moloch, Troopmaster Grimm, and White Defender. I am sad to report that y'all don't like Brooding Moloch. With only 2% of the vote, it's this round's big loser. Somehow beating what I think is a decent vanilla boss is Flukemarm, coming in third with 3% of the vote. Yikes. In second, we've got the White Defender with 16% of the vote. Guess the Dream variant loses the shine of the original fight. Or maybe folks just really love this round's winner, Troopmaster Grimm, who got 79% of the vote. For our final matchup on this side of the bracket, we've got False Knight, Galleon, Traitor Lord, and Nightmare King Grimm. Galleon absolutely beefs it with 1% of the vote in this round. These Dream Warriors have generally been doing pretty badly overall. Beating Galleon by a decent margin with 5% is False Knight, a perfectly solid introduction to boss battles in Hollow Knight. Rising into second place is the Traitor Lord with 10%. While the Traitor Lord used to be quite a joke, I think a lot of folks have come to respect the buffed Lifeblood version of the boss, which is cool to see. But of course, this round was always gonna have just one winner, Nightmare King Grimm, who gets 84% of the vote. Moving on to the other side of the bracket, we're looking at Zote the Mighty, Broken Vessel, The Collector, and Great Nailsage Sly. Coming in last place with the biggest percentage so far is The Collector with 7% of the vote. Good on him. Unfortunately, our third place wasn't quite able to use his memes to reach the top. That's right, Zote the Mighty slots in with 19%. In second place is, in my eyes, the biggest upset imaginable. Great Nailsage Sly only gets 32% of the vote. I've always loved this fight and considered it to be one of the best in the game, so I am legitimately taken aback to see it lose to a pretty simplistic mid-game battle. But the polls don't lie. Broken Vessel gets first place this round with 41% of the vote. Our next round sees a battle between Marmu, Enraged Guardian, Markoth, and Soul Tyrant. Marmu, as has been common for a lot of these Dream Warriors, comes in last place with 7%. Just barely beating her out is the Enraged Guardian with 8%. Markoth does pretty well for a Dream Warrior, taking second place with 13% of the vote, and the clear winner this round is Soul Tyrant, running away with 73% of the vote. Now it's time to pit the Crystal Guardian, Nosk, Absolute Radiance, and Paintmaster Sheo against one another. Crystal Guardian seems to be the obvious loser here, with only 3% of the vote. Nosk hops into third with 12% of the vote. Despite being the big kahuna of the biggest boss rush in the game, Absolute Radiance only takes second place with 30%. I don't blame people though. Unless you really dedicate yourself to this game, Absrad can be more trouble than she's worth. That leaves, of course, Paintmaster Sheo as this round's winner with 55% of the vote, and he really deserves it. This fight gets slept on a lot, so it's nice to see the community recognizing what a fun fight this is. With only a few brackets left, we're taking a look at Winged Nosk, Elder Hu, Nailmasters Oro and Mato, and the Hollow Knight. Elder Hu making out like his Dream Warrior brethren and pulling up last with just 2% of the vote. Winged Nosk does only slightly better, with 3%. Nailmasters Oro and Mato put up a good fight, but can only make it to second place with 26% of the vote. And coming in first is the namesake of the game itself, the titular Hollow Knight, with 69% of the vote. Nice! The penultimate round of the bracket stage sees battle between Soul Warrior, Oblobbles, Lost Kin, and the Radiance. For the first time, we actually have joint third place winners. Both Soul Warrior and Oblobbles got 3% of the vote, so they're tied for last. In second is another potentially unexpected pick. The Radiance only manages to get 40% of the vote, despite her huge importance in the game. And in first is Lost Kin, with 53%. I do really enjoy the Broken Vessel battles, but I'll be honest, I'm surprised they both managed to make it out of the bracket stage. And finally, our last round of the bracket is Gruzmother, Soulmaster, Watcher Knights, and Pure Vessel. Given her competition, Gruzmother does admirably, coming in last with a whole 5% of the vote. Slotting into third is the Soulmaster with 8%. The Watcher Knights are a great fight, and I think a lot of people agree, but only 10% think that they're the best fight in this bracket. And that's not surprising, given that this round's winner is Pure Vessel, making its way to quarterfinals with 78% of the vote. Moving into quarterfinals now, matchups have been reduced to 3 bosses per round. While the bracket stage did cull a lot of the chaff, there are bosses that will be fondly remembered and missed. Shoutouts to Great Nail Sage Sly, Absolute Radiance, Nailmasters Oro and Mato, and the Radiance for putting up a good fight, as well as all the other fun and memorable bosses who just weren't quite good enough to make it to the top 12. The first quarterfinals matchup takes place between the Mantis Lords, Hornet Sentinel, and Sisters of Battle. If you think this one won't be too hard to predict, you're right. Hornet Sentinel runs into some tough foes and gets last place with 9% of the vote. Hopefully that doesn't push Silksong's release date back. The Mantis Lords get second with 14% of the vote. And of course, the upgraded Mantis Lords fight, Sisters of Battle, is the clear winner of this round, with 78% of the vote. Our next quarterfinals pits another set of very memorable characters against one another. It's Dung Defender, Troopmaster Grimm, and Nightmare King Grimm. The Troopmaster loses this one though, with only 13% of the vote. Just barely beating him out is Dung Defender with 14%. But neither of these studly bugs stand a chance against one of Hollow Knight's greatest encounters, the dangerous Nightmare King Grimm, who moves to semifinals with 73% of the vote. Our third quarterfinals matchup has some wildcards, so this could be a real toss-up. We're looking at Broken Vessel, Soul Tyrant, and Paintmaster Sheo. Soul Tyrant makes a good showing, but still pulls up last with 19% of the vote. Coming in second, and frankly much farther than I ever thought it would get, is Broken Vessel with 26%. And moving to semis is everyone's favorite Nailmaster brother, Paintmaster Sheo, with 55% of the vote. Our last matchup then comes down to the Hollow Knight, Lost Kin, and Pure Vessel. I guess it just couldn't be avoided. Pulling up in last is the Lost Kin, with only 9% of the vote. The Hollow Knight makes it to second with 16%, but of course, just as most of the quarterfinals have gone, there's a clear winner. The enhanced fight with the Hollow Knight, Pure Vessel, gets 75% of the vote. Now, only 4 bosses remain. We had to leave some really great contenders behind, but at least we finally eliminated any repeat battles from making it to semis. On one side of the bracket, we've got the Sisters of Battle and Nightmare King Grimm. This is a doozy of a matchup. I have such a hard time deciding which of these bosses I like more, and apparently you guys do too, because this one was neck and neck. But at the end of the day, Nightmare King Grimm comes out with 42% of the vote. And moving to finals, that's right, it's the Sisters of Battle, with 58%. On the other side, we've got Paintmaster Sheo and Pure Vessel. Now, I love Paintmaster Sheo, and I'm so proud of him for making it all the way to semifinals paired with some of the best bosses in all of gaming. But let's be honest, he's not getting much farther. Paintmaster Sheo comes out of this one with 18% of the vote, and the Pure Vessel heads to finals with 82%. Now, finally, the stage is set, for you all to decide who the best boss in Hollow Knight is. But before we do, let's give the semifinals losers a chance to redeem themselves in a battle for third place. Between Nightmare King Grimm and Paintmaster Sheo, Sheo still has a difficult time competing at this level and takes 4th place overall with 16% of the vote. And our 3rd place winner then is Nightmare King Grimm with 84%. And now, the finals. The Sisters of Battle versus Pure Vessel. A duel of titans. This poll started out super tight. I needed to wait a few extra days just to let more votes pop in for this round so that a decisive winner could be crowned. Everyone had a tough time choosing. A lot of commenters pointed out that to them, the Sisters of Battle fight has a good or a greater peak, but loses some steam later into the fight, whereas Pure Vessel is all around solid. But as time went on and more votes piled in, one of these fights did soundly overtake the other. I'm sorry, Pure Vessel, you may be my absolute favorite boss in this game, but by the community standards, you're the second best, with 40% of the vote. Which means that, coming in with 60% of the vote in the grand finals, the boss of bosses, the champions that stand taller than any others, in an absolute masterpiece of a game filled with amazing battles, is the Sisters of Battle. Congratulations to all 4 of these final contenders, and thank you all for taking part in this experiment and voting. I hope you all had a wonderful time, and it's thanks to all of you that this was even possible. While the participants of these polls are only but a fraction of all Hollow Knight players, I'm relatively confident that these results are probably indicative of community opinion as a whole. So now you know. And now I know. We all know who the best bosses in Hollow Knight are, according to the community at large. Of course, everyone's opinion is different, and every boss got at least 1% of the vote in their round. So whoever you are and whichever bosses you love, you do you. They're all great in their own way and deserve that recognition. If you enjoyed this video, please consider checking out my other content and maybe even hitting the like and subscribe buttons. I could tell you that only 2% of my viewers are subscribed, but I get the feeling that knowing that statistic probably won't change your actions on whether or not you'll click that button yourself. So I'll keep that to myself and let you make your own decisions because you deserve it. I've been Technovoid, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.